Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode I will invite a guest on to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them. Musicians, podcasters, audio engineers, or anyone with a passion for creating quality audio content needs the right equipment to make it happen. Look no further than Zounds. Zounds is the perfect place to get everything you need at a good price, delivered right to your home. Guitars, keyboards, microphones, amps, anything you need, Zounds has it. Please use the link in the show notes for the best music equipment sales online. Joining me today is a multi-talented musician out of the UK, Julience. Julience is a multi-instrumental singer-songwriter whose new single, Alcohol, is out there on all the streaming platforms. Originally from the Netherlands, he relocated to Manchester to pursue his music career, and we are lucky to have him with us today. Welcome, Julience, and thank you for being on the show.
Hello, Steve. No problem. It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad you reached out on Instagram and wanted to be a part of this. This is great.
The pleasure is all mine, Steve. Really nice to do something like this. I've never really done it before, so yeah, let's get cracking. That's what I'll say.
All right, let's jump right into this. What album did you bring to the table, and why is it so special to you?
Right, the album I brought to the table today is a live album from 1979 by Neil Young and Crazy Horse called Live Rust. I've always been tossed and turning about one of my favorite band or music artists is, and there's always been, at one point it was the Beatles and then it was Oasis with, but I think Neil Young has always been pretty much close second all the way through. And I think there's a lot of Neil Young I've listened to lately, the last couple of years, that I've really never listened to before. And it's just, for me, gotten to the conclusion that Neil Young, for me, has got to be the greatest songwriter, the greatest guitar player, just the whole musician, the package, everything. And Live Rust, I think, that is basically where Neil Young was just at the pinnacle of his career. It was the band was on fire, Crazy Horse, I think the greatest backing band of all time. They just completely fitted so perfectly to his style of music and everything, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And this was a real fun album to listen to. Several songs that I had not heard before. Yeah, but obviously many songs that are classic hits from Neil Young. I had the privilege of kind of ripping the Neil Young collection from my brother. Yeah. He got it for Christmas one year, and it was like 8 CDs, and I just ripped them all. And it had all kinds of Buffalo Springfield and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young on there, and a lot of old stuff. So that's where I really learned Neil Young, was out of that box set, because before that, I had just heard a couple of the hits and knew I liked them, but never dove in. And this album was really cool to listen to because it was like a musical journey of his career up to that point. Yeah. How it starts out with his, early folk acoustic stuff and then ends with his full on punk, early grunge era. Oh yeah.
Well, if you say yourself that now that there's a lot of Neil Young stuff that you hadn't heard before, but at the time when he did the Rust Never Sleeps tour, on the same tour, he recorded another album called Rust Never Sleeps, which was kind of recorded live and then overdubbed in the studio. They took all the audience out with, and it kind of got released as a studio album. But during that tour, there were many people that went to see Neil Young, and loads of them songs they'd never heard before. Think of songs like Powderfinger, Sedan Delivery, Hey Hey My My, the big two. So for people that went to see Neil Young at that time, they had never heard them songs before, so it was, for them, the introduction to that new music as well, especially, like you said, the punk rock style. Because at the time, I think the 70s for Neil Young, as for many musicians, was probably a really hectic time. Because obviously, early 70s, Neil Young released, Harvest, which was probably the best-known Neil Young album there is, with a couple of the most best-known songs, like Old Man, Heart of Gold, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's sitting right over there, actually. I was just listening to that album the other day.
Oh, yeah. Well, like at the time, what he did was he went on tour, but he didn't play any of the Harvest stuff. He just played completely new electric sets. So the same thing, people never heard it before. Some people didn't like it. Some people thought it was great. And they released an album called Time Fades Away, which is a really not very well-known Neil Young album. It never got released on CD as far as I know. Well, so it's a kind of same situation in the late 70s when he went on the Rust Never Sleeps tour. Like I said, especially in the 70s with Neil Young, a lot of his, like Danny Whitten, his main guitar player in Crazy Horse at the start, he died of heroin overdose. Mm-hmm. Neil Young went through a bit of a depression, and they released a couple of albums like Tonight's the Night, On the Beach, that had a really downy feel to it. Very different than the more upbeat Harvest, so to say. So then, late 70s, with the advent of punk music, the idea of the whole tour was kind of a sort of a concept tour. That's why it's called Rust Never Sleeps. The idea that music constantly evolves, right? So, and I think Neil Young, as for many people, had the idea that loads of all the music from all the musicians, that bands had stopped, like the Beatles had quit 10 years ago. Led Zeppelin pretty much came to an end at that time. The Who as well. So a lot of old musicians, old bands that were well known at the time, they kind of fell out, and punk rock and new wave and all that stuff came in. So the idea of the tour was kind of for Neil Young to stay relevant. That was kind of what they tried to do, stay relevant. And that's the concept of the tour. That's why if you look at any of the old footage from that tour, you see all these kind of weird, crazy people walking around in hooded shirts and whatever.
Well, because you say it was a concept tour, it had the goal was a studio album, a live album, and a movie, I believe, that he co-directed.
Yeah, true. Yeah, as Bernard Shaky, I think he called himself as director.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the pseudonym in there.
But like I said, I think at the time it was kind of as if Neil Young, which is an unstoppable force, kind of ran into a unmovable object, which is Crazy Horse, and it just completely, especially at that time, it just completely just came out with a bang, and that's just the absolute pinnacle of his career at that time.
Yeah, I agree, and he plays very well with Crazy Horse. I don't know how you discovered Neil Young, if you were a fan of his folk stuff first and then the rock stuff later, the punk grunge stuff, or vice versa. But it's neat to kind of look at him as the solo artist and the singing in harmony with Buffalo Springfield and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and then also leading 10 to 20 minute jams with Crazy Horse, and he can do both of them excellently. It's not many musicians can do that. That's extreme level of talent there.
Exactly. Yeah. Spot on.
So how did you discover Neil Young? Was it like the folk stuff first or the rock stuff first?
Well, I think probably a bit of both, really. I mean, obviously, like I say, Harvest was, one of the albums that always got, played at home. Because where I lived in Holland, my grandparents both lived about an hour and a half away. So every 2-3 weeks, we'd always drive there, my parents did. And we'd always, sometimes I would pick an album, or my sister would, or my parents would. But Neil Young was always one of them artists that just, the greatest hits album or the live Rust album, they always found their way into the car pretty regularly. So that's kind of how we're going into it.
Okay. If it was this album that helped you discover Neil Young, then that right there, you get a compressed best of
exactly,
career there. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Like I said, I think over the course of my life, I'm 28 years old now, nearly 29 actually next month, but it's by far the album I've listened to the most. Because I just remember loads of Fridays after work when I come home and I'd go out for a few bevies, the pub, and what do I do? I just let's put on some music, let's put on live Rust, and just listen to the whole album, start to finish. I've done that, and that album, so much more than any other album in my life.
And that was going to be my next question: is how do you listen to it? Is it straight through, or do you have select tracks that you like to jump to?
Well, if I have time, and I've sometimes have time, so I do listen to it in its entirety, probably once a month or so. But sometimes I just, if I'm just at home before I have to go to work again with, listening to a bit of music, there's a couple of songs later on, especially the electric songs I normally tend to jump to.
Okay. So, walk me through the album. I mean, what are some standouts, or we can go track by track. It's your album.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can pretty much go through the whole album, really. Well, it starts with a song called Sugar Mountain, which was a B-side to one of the really early songs that he had. maybe from the after the Gold Rush era. Maybe
it was actually written when he was with the Squires.
Right, really?
Oh, yeah, it goes back that far.
All right, yeah. So it's a really, really old tune.
Yeah, well, one of his first probably, cleanly written songs as far as released and recorded.
That's fair to say, yeah. Now, obviously, that's a start of the acoustic set at the beginning. Then you have a couple of songs that come through the review, like Comes a Time, I Am a Child. I think I Am a Child was another B-side, really early B-side around the same time, probably.
Yeah, that's a Buffalo Springfield tune.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where Comes a Time comes from, but I know that I Am a Child was Buffalo Springfield.
Right, okay, yeah. Well, I think Comes a Time came from the album that got released before... I think it was even before Rust Never Sleeps, before the tour, or it was just before American Stars and Bars was the album Comes a Time that the song was on. Then you get obviously one of the better songs in the album, I think. Better songs, I mean, they're all great. You get the piano version of, the version that he plays on the piano after the Gold Rush.
Thinking about what a friend had said, I was hoping it was a lie.
It's just a beautiful song in entirety, from the album version, the live version.
It is. I agree, and it just screams of that folk style of just telling a random story.
Exactly. Yeah, about spaceships in the base.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, but it's fun to listen to, and like I said, it's a beautiful piano version.
Then he plays a piano and then the harmonica as well at the same time. It's just great. He plays a harmonica throughout the whole acoustic set, but then when you hear it together with the piano, because on the original studio recording, it's done with a horn, I think. It's a horn solo.
Oh, really?
So live he plays it with the harmonica, and it's awesome. Next song, you get the My, My, Hey, Hey, it's called, which is people know Hey, Hey, My, My, the electric song.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually did two versions of the acoustic version that he played early on in the set. And then obviously later on they come back with the electric version. But that's obviously, like I said, that is one of the songs that nobody had ever heard before they came to Neil Young's concert.
My, hey, hey. Rock and roll is here to stay.
So that would have
been great hearing this live for the first time without ever, hearing it on the radio. That would have been a hell of an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the controversial, lyrics of, better to burn out than to fade away. And, Kurt Cobain put that in his suicide note sort of thing.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. My, hey, hey.
That's why they call him the godfather of grunge. I mean, he played with Pearl Jam in the 90s, and obviously Kurt Cobain reference to it. So he had a massive influence on the Seattle sound in the 90s.
I love the way this one ends, where the last line, rock and roll will never die, is the music stops. It's just a cappella, that one last line. And he's allowed to just kind of let that last word trail, and then the crowd cheers. It ends very, very well.
Yeah. Well, and on the film version, what happens is he actually puts his guitar down and gets into a sleeping bag. And then the road eyes, they call them. They wear like purple hoods or whatever it is that look a bit like aliens, whatever it is. They take him off the stage in a sleeping bag while he says, rock and roll will never die. And then they set up the stage with the electrics, and then obviously the electric set start.
What?
It's really funny, but it's a bit funny, but it's.
Oh man, I gotta watch this video now.
Oh yeah,
that sounds wild.
Oh, it's crazy, yeah. But obviously, another thing about this song is, like with the advent of punk, like I said, he kind of tried to stay relevant, and it's a tribute to Johnny Ron from the Sex Pistols. I mean, how awesome is that?
And Elvis. So it's the King is dead. He's talking about Elvis, and then this is the story of Johnny Rotten. So it's that he's trying to be that bridge, the gap.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's special. It's amazing. And then that's where the album for me just goes into overdrive. You get the electric stuff. You get 2 songs really. When You Dance, I Could Really Love, which is off After the Gold Rush, 1970, I think it was. Yeah.
That's one I hadn't heard before.
It's a song early released, and then you get The Loner, which comes straight after it.
And now the Loner has always been one of my favorite Neil Young tunes, but I had never heard this version. I'm used to the acoustic slowed down version.
Yeah, of his first studio album. Yeah, the first solo album.
So this was a nice change. That was a nice pump it up a little bit version.
The guitars it's just awesome. The guitar sound of it, his really erratic guitar playing. It's just, I don't know. You can have these musicians that can play 1 million notes per second, per minute, but you don't have to be like that. I mean, Neil Young is the living embodiment of that. You don't necessarily need to play 1 million notes per minute.
That's true.
To be a great guitar player. Yeah, so that's the start of the electric set. And then it goes back to a bit of acoustic, because then you get the Needle and the Damage Done, which is obviously a really famous song of Harvest, about obviously the heroin addiction that was rife at the time with people like Danny Whitten and the roadie Bruce Berry that he sings of on Tonight Tonight. It's heartbreaking, but it's a heartbreaking origin of the song, but it is a wonderful song. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason.
I hit the city and I lost my band. I watched the needle take another man. Gone, gone, the damage done.
And I mean, it's so heartfelt. I mean, every time Neil Young plays a song, you can, whether it's on the album version, which is also recorded live, by the way, or on the live bust version, or even when you look at him on Glastonbury in 2009, whatever it was, it's always emotional, really emotional for Neil Young to play that song. But yeah, so it's probably one of the most beautiful songs ever written, especially about, the subject involved. Then you get, after Needle and the Damage Done, you get a song called A Lot of Love, which is, I think, also from the Come to Time album that they released about 2 years before. It's a nice little song, but it's not really one that stands out on the album, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It was a nice song, and it was new to me. Another one that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what you can say. It's a nice song.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, it's a nice filler song. On the live set. Well,
it takes everything. Well, it doesn't really take it down because Needle and Damage Done is obviously a slower tune, but it definitely, from the flow of the album, it's a slow love song, which then a drastic change when you get to Sedan Delivery.
Yeah, oh yeah, Sedan Delivery. I mean, what to make of that song? I mean, the lyrics are just. Is it about a car? Is it about a job? Sedan Delivery, I think, is a car, which shows my limited knowledge about cars.
Yeah.
He sings about beating a woman with varicose veins in the pool hall after 19 games.
My note for it is just this very punk.
Yeah,
this song just screams of him trying to do a punk song and succeeding. Yeah, exactly, it kind of comes out of nowhere.
Oh no, yeah, and then the lyrics are just didn't make any sense. I don't know.
They're kind of bonkers.
Yeah. But what is the thing that he says at the end there? Sedan delivery is a job I'm sure I'll keep, and it was hard to find. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, like you said, it's a really punky song. That's really that attitude to it.
Yes.
After Sedan delivery, which is on the LP, it was the opener to side 3, which is not only my favorite Neil Young song, but probably my favorite song just in general. It's Powderfinger.
Then I saw light in my face flash in the sky.
This is a good song. Yeah, I've always liked Powderfinger because it's the folk storytelling, but it's a harder song. So he's mixing his two styles.
Exactly, yeah. And there's always it's so funny. You can always find whenever it's a video of him playing the song or anywhere, any discussions on albums, there's always people arguing about what the song is really about. Because people seem to interpret it in so many different ways. Even though I personally think the lyrics are pretty straightforward. I mean, it's about, a bunch of bootleggers or moonshiners that, get caught by the police.
It's somebody doing something there. I mean, there's really no definition of a war or, prohibition or something, but they got caught, or their enemies caught up to them, and it's a gunboat or something. And the elderly men are not around. So the young man has to take up arms, and he dies.
I mean, that lyric is just amazing. And Daddy's gone. My brother's are out hunting in the mountains. And Billy John has been drinking since the river took Emmylou. Yeah. It's like you say, it's like one of the murder ballads, really. Like almost one of the murder ballads, from the people, like the Deliverance kind of thing. That's always what comes in mind when I hear the song. It's the film Deliverance,
I could see that. I completely could see that.
Yeah, you always get that kind of feeling with it.
My vision was more the same thing, but just more like a Civil War America era.
Oh yeah,
where the they found us, and all we can do is fight.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. The song has so many different interpretations that people give it. I mean, I've never heard Neil Young, tell us conclusively what it's about. I mean, if I'd ever meet him, have the pleasure to meet him, I'll ask him. But until then. But yeah, and then, so they get Powderfinger. After that, it goes straight into Cortez the Killer, which is from the album called Zuma in, I think, 1977.
Fantastic song.
Yeah, this live version is just absolutely amazing. And
there isn't a version of Cortez the Killer that I don't like. Every single one is different.
Yeah.
One may be 7 minutes, one may be 15 minutes. And it's just, it's amazing. I love any band that can do that. Just turn any solo into a 5-minute jam session live. I love that shit. And Cortez the Killer is one of my favorite jam songs, because it's a wild tale, of the whole, Cortez-y explorer and Montezuma and all that. And then you get that last verse that's about a woman who misses him. It's like, so what is this song about?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he said it himself that, it's not an historian. So there's him writing a song about, Hernan Cortez. But yeah, we'll throw a woman in there because, there must be a woman somewhere who misses him. Well, then I think on the CD version anyway, the song is actually cut short a little bit because it wouldn't fit on the CD version otherwise.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I think the album version is about 50 seconds a minute longer. But to be honest, that's the shorter version that's on the CD is the one I've always heard. That's the one I've always, listened to.
On the side, there's two excellent covers of this song. One is Grace Potter with Joe Satriani. That's a version I love. But then also there's another version with Dave Matthews and Warren Haynes at the Central Park.
I knew you were going to say that one.
They're great. Both versions are just fantastic.
Yeah. I know you were going to, and when you said, two covers, I knew you were going to say that Dave Matthews and Warren Haynes. I mean, it's crazy good. Well, I think the guitar solo in Chords is killer. I think this is the ultimate version of the song. Well, like I said, there's so many great versions of it. Right, so next song on the list is Cinnamon Girl, which is from Everybody Notices Is Nowhere.
A dreamer of picture, I run in the night. You see us together, chasing the moonlight, my cinnamon girl.
That's a classic one.
It is a classic song, yeah. I mean, there's not much to say about that, really. It's just a classic tune. And many people will probably know that song if they hear it. Yeah, so that's in the middle of the... It's being... And the album is being sandwiched between Caught as a Killer and Like a Hurricane. And Like a Hurricane, again, it's just... I think this is just the ultimate version of the song. Because you get after the second verse and chorus, there's a guitar solo that goes on for about, I think, between 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, but it just seems to go on forever.
Yeah,
it seems to never stop.
Yeah, I mean, this one is nearly 8 minutes in total, yeah. And it's a great. I mean, like I've heard other versions, and just like you said for Cortez, this is to me the pinnacle one of Like a Hurricane. This is one to always go back to.
Oh yeah, I think so. It's the one that on Dutch classic radio in Holland there used to be a station called Arrow Classic Rock, and that was always the version of the song that they'd play.
Oh really?
So on Dutch radio was always that's always a version that they played. They never played the studio version. It's always that one.
Nice.
It starts really. When as soon as the song starts, it starts with this like guitar feedback, and whenever you hear like I hear 2 seconds of it. You hear 2 seconds of the guitar feedback, and you know that it is Like a Hurricane from Live Lust. It's just unmistakable.
Yeah, that's one of those songs where you're right. You got that little bit of the white noise feedback at the beginning, and you know exactly what's coming.
Yeah. Classic, yeah.
The classic rock stations where I grew up, it was just all studio versions damn near all the time of all the classic rock tracks. So in my adulthood, when I discovered more of the live albums that were out there, they blew my mind each one over, because it was like, oh, this is so much better. Why weren't they playing this one on WLPO, Illinois Valley tiny classic rock stations?
Oh yeah. But they should, yeah. I mean, like you say, it's the ultimate version of the song. It doesn't.
The only live song they'd ever play was "Do You Feel Like We Do" from Peter Frampton. So,
right, yeah,
they got to play that one every hour.
Oh yeah, I'd imagine it's that one and probably Bob Marley, "No Woman, No Cry." That's the live song you always hear.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they should. Just probably write a letter and say that's a song you have to play instead. But yeah. But then it's all the more enjoyment if you know the studio version and then you stumble upon this one. It's just all the more pleasure.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, that you're right. I mean, when you learn the studio albums, grow up with them, and then you do hear those live versions or those the demo versions are always fun to hear. You hear like, oh, that's different. That's better. Oh, that's worse. That was an odd decision.
Oh no, yeah.
Like recently, I've watched the Beatles Get Back several times now.
Right.
And we talked about that a lot in my classic rock roundtable. It was really neat to hear those. Say you grow up with those very standard Beatles tracks, and then you hear the origins of them in different versions, and you hear different lyrics, wrong lyrics. You're just pointing at, hey, you're almost there, John. You're almost there, Paul. You almost got it.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, if you look at Get Back, it's crazy to think that some songs that George Harrison wrote at the time didn't even make it to the album. I mean,
yeah.
Ended up on All Things Must Pass.
All Things Must Pass. I recently bought that album because of Get Back, and then my cousin is a big fan of that album, and just that album keeps coming up in conversation. So I need to finally buy this and listen to it. It's a fantastic album.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good buy. Should have listened to that a long time ago.
Oh, classic. Yeah. No, so after Like Hurricane, you get the last two songs, which are, then you get the electric version of Hey, Hey, My, My, which is Hey, Hey, My, My this time instead of My, My, Hey, Hey.
Into the Black.
Yeah, Into the Black. And that's where he gets that really, there's a point where the guitar that he plays, he's got this really, I've always tried to find out what exactly he uses to get that really, really deep sound, the really bassy sound he gets on the guitar. But it turns out it's a octave divider, I think it's called, or something like that. I mean, you hear the song, it's just completely, really based up that the guitar sound. It's amazing, but that's really, really punky, really grungy. That's if you get like, That's another probably forerunner of where all the grunge guys got it from. That sound.
Oh, I imagine, yeah.
And then last song of the night is Tonight Tonight, which is from the album Tonight Tonight, which was recorded after the tour that he did to kind of promote Harvest, the one that I talked about before already, where he played a lot of music that nobody had heard before instead of playing all the Harvest stuff. But that was during the tour that Danny Whitten, the guitar player from Crazy Horse, died of a heroin overdose. Because I think Neil Young sent him away on that tour before the first gig even, because he couldn't perform because of the heroin addiction he had. And then when he got home, I think he overdosed and he died. And that sent Neil Young into a spiraling depression at the time. And that's where Tonight Tonight comes from. But then the song, it talks about, obviously, Danny Whitten, but then it also talks about a roadie called Bruce Berry, who was a working man. And he died of a heroin overdose as well during that tour I talked about before.
Damn.
So so it's just another really, really depressed song. But it's from what people generally call the Ditch Trilogy after Harvest, where he released 3 albums that were just completely different in tone, really, really depressing, really low and depressing and revolutionary kind of. And this version again, that just goes on forever and ever. It's so much different than the studio version. The studio version is a little bit messy, but this version is just completely executed.
Yeah, I enjoyed this track. And after Into the Black, my first thought is, that's how you should end the album. Why are they tacking on another track? But it's actually really, really good album closer for this compressed live album. I love the vocals with the harmonizing on Tonight's the Night, that lyric. Yeah. But then the solos remind me of the old Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young live sets.
Yeah.
They sound a lot. They don't. I say this in a good way. The solos in this one don't sound like Into the Black or Cortez or Cinnamon Girl. They sound like Southern Man and Ohio and just those old style Carry On, those old tunes. That's what it sounds like during the solo sections.
Yeah, like the Four-Way Street Live album by Crosby, Stills and Young.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This track would sit fine on that album.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Like you say, it's just a classic closer. I mean, again, it's just a long jam session. It goes on forever, and then the music stops and the vocals go on, and then it picks up again. It just ends in such an explosion of sound. Yeah, so it's probably the perfect ending to the album, like you say.
Yeah, this was a really good album and topical. I don't know the exact air date of this particular episode, but we are just in the height of Neil Young pulling the stuff from Spotify. So.
Oh no, yeah.
So when this airs, I probably will not be able to link the album to Spotify like I usually do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But that's a shame because on Spotify, the version of Caught as a Killer was the longer version that they had to cut a minute off from the CD version. Well, I think it's at YouTube anyway, but yeah. So it's really easy to go on Spotify and put the long version of Caught as a Killer on. But now, obviously, it's a little bit more difficult.
Well, if you go to Apple Music now, there's a great big banner at the top, and it says the home of Neil Young. So,
right, okay.
Yeah. So this stuff wasn't planned at all. No. Yeah, there's not more to that story. Jeez.
You got to love the guy. I mean, he does what he wants, doesn't he?
I definitely think there's just more. There's a business reason behind all this. There's contract stuff that the whole pull my music or Joe Rogan. Yeah, that's bullshit. No, I personally think there's business reasons all of this was done.
Yeah, would he really care about it? To be honest, I mean, yeah, that's a question. But then no. But then he's never really been a guy to brush his opinion under the carpet.
This is true. This is true.
I mean, about 15 years ago, I made a whole album about impeaching President Bush, living with war. I mean, that came out of nowhere as well.
He had a crazy album that I enjoyed it, Americana.
Right, okay, yeah.
Which had like Oh Susanna and just these old school tunes. I mean, it was fun. I mean, I don't know if he was making a statement or anything. It was just these are like he wanted to do an album of weird Southern folk tunes.
Yeah, but exactly. But the guy does what he wants, and you've got to love him for it.
Yeah,
and he could pull it off as well. So sometimes for other people, it might sound a bit gimmicky. Maybe for Neil Young as well, but he gets away with it. I mean, the guy can do anything. He can do everything. Yeah, I mean, he lived and still living, obviously, but he's a surviving, member of the 60s singer-songwriter group that they all, him and Joni Mitchell and all them, they all wrote together. And then he's one of the few that, still maintains some sort of relevance these days. That's true, yeah.
All the rock groups still hold him with reverence. Yeah, I mean, the guy releases an album every year or so. He's got like 40 something albums. Yeah, it just keeps going, never stops. He had another one out just a couple of months ago, Barn. It's like him and Van Morrison. Is like who's gonna top out? They both have over 40. It's great. Oh no, yeah. That's another one there. Controversial. Van Morrison. So Live Rust made your top spot. What albums made your shortlist? Right, shortlist, right. A couple last year, because I turned 28 in February, and February had 28 days, I decided to make a top 28 of albums. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. Which I put on my Facebook and my Instagram, whatever, all that stuff. And at the time, actually, this album was a number 2. But like I said, I think the last year or so, it has shifted to number 1. I mean, I can't go beyond anymore. Well, the album that was number 1 on that list was What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis. Great album. Yeah. But another reason why I decided to go for Live Rust is because I think there might be a little bit more interesting stuff to tell about Neil Young and whatever than Oasis. I mean, but then other albums, I mean, Back in Black, AC/DC, another classic. Yeah. That's up. Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd by, obviously, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Yeah. Beastie Boys, another bit different, but yeah, Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. Oh, yeah, one. There you go. Irish Tour 74, another live album by Rory Gallagher. Okay. So, yeah, Rory Gallagher was an Irish guitar player that was within like the touring blues community a really big figure. Well, nobody really knows about Rory Gallagher unless you're really into that. But it's another album that's just live album, like another one where all the songs that he plays in an album are just better than the studio recordings. It's just the ultimate execution of all them songs. Oh, there's a couple more I can name, like The White Album by the Beatles. It's another one that's up there. Achtung Baby by U2. Okay. I mean, there's so much. I mean, you could go on forever about great albums. But yeah, those were a couple that were in my top 10. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd is another major one. Yeah. Well, yeah, so those are where you get kind of the picture of where I get my musical inspiration from and how I look at it and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, I talked Animals for my album on the at the end of the first season, but I almost picked Definitely Maybe by Oasis.
Okay, yeah.
I really love that album. I mean, I didn't have much to talk about it other than just I love the tracks.
Yeah.
I didn't have the insight or the story to talk for a decent amount of time on it. So that was one of the reasons it got bumped down on the list. But I've always loved that album.
I do. Yeah. Rock and Roll Star, Slide Away, one of my favorite songs of all time.
Someone will bring Oasis to the table at some point, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that's great. I'll definitely listen to it. But yeah, like I said, Animals, another great album by Pink Floyd. I mean, Dogs is just an amazing song.
Yeah. Don't get me started on Animals. I'll talk for another hour.
But I won't. No, I won't keep it that long.
Well, before we wrap this up, please tell our listeners what you're working on, where they can find you, and anything you'd like to talk about.
Right. Okay. So last month I released my debut single. Well, debut single. It's the first single in about 9 years I've actually released. But I kind of see it as a fresh start because I did it before I moved to England. I released it in Holland, so now it's kind of the first thing I've released over here. So it's kind of a fresh start, which is Alcohol, which is on Spotify, Apple Music. If you go to julience.com, you can pretty much find links to everywhere there, like the SoundCloud, Reverb Nation kind of stuff, and Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you can think of. We have a next single slated for release on the 18th of February, I think it is, 18th or 19th of February.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want. Spotify, follow me, like the songs, help us out, and keep tuned for the latest releases coming up. I'll be aiming to release about three new singles within the next 3 months or so. So there's definitely some new stuff on the way, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I've listened to Alcohol quite a bit. Great tune.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll be putting links in the show notes for all your social media pages. And I encourage everyone to check them out. Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Julience, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure to sit and talk with you about Neil Young's Live Rust.
No problem, Steve. It was an absolute pleasure to be on your show. I'd love to do it again.
Well, yeah, we'll make that happen. Thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. And as I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.